Have you ever thought, I'm not ready to pitch myself for visibility opportunities? Or am I? Wait, when should I pitch myself? When am I ready to put myself out there? You see, I remember being nervous to send my first pitch too, and then I realized the worst thing that can happen is that they are going to say, no, we don't want you on our podcast. But the truth is, now having sent over 500 pitches, I know that most likely when someone doesn't want you as a guest on their show, they're not going to say anything. They're just going to ignore the pitch. So it's really not that big of a deal anyway. But if you've ever struggled wondering when is the right time to start pitching yourself, keep listening, friend. Today, I'm going to answer that question and a few others, like when is pitching not a good use of your time, and what should you almost definitely have in place before you start landing opportunities. Tune in as I tackle those questions and more today. Hey there, pitches. Welcome to the Go Pitch Yourself podcast with me, Angie Trueblood, a self-proclaimed podcast junkie. I'm on a mission to rid the world of the crappy pitches that are filling up inboxes everywhere. Want to help? Then let's get pitching. Hey there, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Go Pitch Yourself podcast. And today, before we dig into the episode, I want to give a listener shout out to Julie Calcote, who left the kindest review over on Apple Podcasts. She says, wow, there are very few podcasts that I can squeeze in each week, but this one is on my must-listen list. Angie is a true expert on pitching in an authentic, successful, and aligned way. If you own a business, you need to listen to this podcast. Girl, thank you. As most of you know, ratings and reviews are actually how we help other people find the show. So, Julie, I so appreciate you helping spread the word about the Go Pitch Yourself podcast. And if you're listening right now and so far loving the show, please pop on over to your podcast player and leave a review. You can do that now, and I will totally wait right here for you. Joking, you can press pause, go do that, and then come back, please. So today I'm going to tackle a question that I get asked pretty often. And interestingly enough, I get this question from beginning business owners, so folks who are just in the beginning stages of growing their business and creating revenue. And I also get this question from folks who are well established in their business. And it's one that is really near and dear to my heart because I am so passionate about people really sharing their gifts and putting themselves out there in a way that helps more people connect with them. And so what actually prompted me to record an entire episode on this was one of our group members. So we have an amazing Facebook community called Go Pitch Yourself. If you're not in it, you're missing out, so go join. But one of the members in there, Samantha Siemens, who is a social media and ad strategist, posted a question this morning, actually, and it said, when should we start pitching ourselves? What point in business should we be in before we start doing that? And I really appreciate Samantha throwing that question out there. By the way, if you want to follow her, she is over on Instagram at 1010social. The first 10 is spelled out. Then it is the number 10, and then it is social. But I really appreciate her asking that question because I think that's something that a lot of folks question. And I think honestly, because they don't know the answer to that, it keeps people from being as visible as might benefit them. So there's definitely no right or wrong answer to this question, but there are a few instances when pitching yourself for podcast interviews or speaking opportunities might not be the best use of your time. And I think that is something to consider. So yes, it is a bit of a time investment to pitch yourself for opportunities and to appropriately research ahead of time and to appropriately follow up after. So there is an investment, whether it's in time, you doing it yourself, or spending money to have someone like me do it. But there are a couple of times that I don't encourage folks to even spend the money on it because I feel like their resources should be spent in other places. So one example of that is for business owners who are just beginning in their business and they've literally never sold either their service or their product before. And that's an instance where I really believe that you should test that offer with your own audience, with your warm market, with getting offline perhaps, and maybe shopping that around to some local folks to see if this business that you've created has some meat to it. If there are going to be people that are interested in buying from you and actually paying money for the service or the product that you're offering. I don't take on clients when they come to me and they're brand new in business and they're thinking that podcast interviews are going to be a way for them to kind of see if people are interested in buying what they offer. So that's the first example, is when you've literally never sold anything. The second example is very similar, and that's when you need cash and you need it fast. So pitching yourself for visibility opportunities often can be a long game approach, especially if you're talking about speaking opportunities on live stages. A lot of times the call for speakers is 6 months in advance of the actual event. So that for sure is not a way for you to get an inflow of revenue quickly. But even with podcast interviews, definitely there are times when the turnaround to generating income is quick. Recently, I've had 2 clients who we always book 3-month packages in my concierge level offering. And at month 1.5, they had already earned back their 3-month investment in booked clients. So that's a great example of how you actually can make money from pitching yourself for podcast interviews and connecting with folks. But it's not always dependable, and there's no real way to know going in what that conversion is going to look like. The other piece of that is if you're in a state of mind where it's almost a scarcity mentality to where you know you need to make a certain amount of money to keep the doors open, it just doesn't create the best mindset for you to go out there and really serve other audiences. It just adds a whole other dimension that often doesn't present you in a way that connects with audiences. So if you're looking to make cash fast, in my world, the best way to do that is to go back and connect one-on-one with people that have been interested in your service before, or that might be open to referring you to folks that they know. Not going on a podcast and hoping that someone is going to listen and totally buy what you have to offer short term. Again, that can happen. Just like I mentioned in episode 2, I was able to be on someone else's podcast and within 30 days had booked a client from it. But that's not the norm, and it's nothing that I would want someone depending on if they came to me looking for me to pitch them for podcasts. The third example, and this really goes into it's just not a reliable, dependable outcome, is if you have a book or you have a business launch of some sort that's coming up within the next 3 months, and you're depending on these pitches to really make or break the success of that launch. Now, can podcast pitching amplify launches that you already have planned and you already have a good system in place for marketing? Absolutely. It's a great surround sound and it's a great buzz generator. But because you never quite know, 1, who's going to say yes to the pitch, and then 2, let's say you do get accepted on several different podcasts. Sometimes the actual recording is months out. And then other times after you record, you still are not quite sure when that episode is going to go live. There are so many variables that play into when a podcast episode might get accepted or go live that I don't love banking on it when someone has an absolute hard deadline. So those are 3 instances when I would typically say, not right now. It's probably not the best use of your time. You can definitely spend your time and money elsewhere and probably get a bigger bang for your buck. Now, there are, though, I would say, certain assets that you should have prepared before you start landing opportunities. Now, this doesn't mean that you need to have these assets in place before you start pitching, but you just need to have the time available to get these things lined up as you're starting to put yourself out there more. Now, the only caveat to this is that there are times when people are generally interested in creating a buzz that they're not looking to quantify and capture, and they're really just looking to sort of get validation that their expertise is something that the market is interested in hearing more about. And so in that instance, I would say, yeah, you could pitch yourself as long as you aren't looking for hardcore business results and business deliverables. But the truth is, most people that are looking to pitch themselves for opportunities are looking for some sort of business result. So in an ideal world, absolutely, folks would have these things in place before starting to pitch themselves, or at least start making progress on them so that at the point of landing opportunities, they would be lined up. And again, this goes back to some of the first examples that we gave, are you need to have a proven way to sell your offer or products. You really need to have some sort of system, and you can call it a funnel if you want, but you really need to have some sort of customer journey to where you have the capability of capturing someone that might be interested in you and what you offer, and then a way to guide them back to you that ultimately does end up converting them to a customer or client. So that's the first thing that you really want to have locked down before you start thinking about pitching yourself for a lot of different opportunities. The second asset, I guess, I would want to see my clients have in place, and this is something that we work on together, is a way for you to capture the folks that hear you that end up falling in love with you. So it's great to go on lots of different podcasts and have that audience really love you and think, man, I would love to learn more about her. But if you don't have a way to guide them back to either your sales funnel or, like we said, a customer journey, it's almost a lost opportunity. And then it only becomes people come back to follow you that are absolutely interested. There's no real way to warm up people that are intrigued and might want to get to know you a little bit better. So great examples of ways that you can capture folks that fall in love with you are having a really nice opt-in to offer at the end of a podcast interview. Traditionally, folks, especially in the online space, are going to have some sort of freebie or downloadable item on their website that they collect someone's email address for. And that's what I like to call the stickiness factor. That's a way that if that person is interested in you, they can go back to your website, they can sign up for your opt-in, and then you've captured an email. So now they're back inside of your audience, right? You've grown your audience and your email list as a result of being on this podcast or doing this speaking opportunity. In lieu of having that, or ideally in addition, you might have a podcast of your own. And I love when I work with other podcasters because that's often a really easy ask, is to say, hey, if you're listening on this show and you like what you're hearing, then hop back on over to the Go Pitch Yourself podcast. And if you have your own podcast optimized to capture people and keep them coming back to your podcast, then you have that stickiness factor. You may have a really rockstar landing page on your website. Maybe it offers the opt-in, maybe it offers something of content value. Well, you can always pixel that so that later you can always run ads to those folks. But there needs to be some way, some offering of stickability to where people can be captured when they kind of dig in to find out who you are. The other thing I will say, and this is one that I don't think you have to have something set in stone that is perfection, but it is important for you to have a consistent, cohesive brand in place so that when people discover you and maybe they go from your website to Instagram to your podcast, all of those places, all of those homes that you occupy need to really support one another and look like it's a nice cohesive brand across different platforms. So if you're going to guide people to your Facebook page, make sure there's some activity on that page that complements the content and activity that you have in other places. So you don't want to have lots of different handles, ideally directing them on Instagram to one location and one sort of, maybe that would be for me, Angie_Trueblood, which is my actual Instagram handle. But then I would direct them back to a website that would maybe be the name of the podcast. No, ideally, you want to be able to guide people to very similarly named locations that also have a really consistent, cohesive brand as you jump back and forth between them. So again, you don't need to have that perfect. There just needs to be some level of consistency so that you are supported by some of those digital assets that you have out in the space. Okay, so we've covered when it's not the best use of your time to actually start pitching yourself. We've covered what you might want to have in place before you start pitching. And now I'm going to tell you, this is the part that speaks to my heart, things that I do not want you to wait on to make you feel ready to pitch, or that you deserve, that you have to earn the right to pitch yourself for visibility opportunities. So the first thing that you don't need, which might be surprising to people, you do not need some monster online following. And interestingly enough, I will, in my pitches for clients, if they have a large online following, I'll definitely note that in the email pitch. And I'll even put numbers in there if it's something that's super impressive or if it's far bigger than who we're pitching to. But that's not that important to many of the podcasters that I'm pitching that end up being really great strategic fits. If you remember from episode 3 with Kendra Hennessy, she pointed out that she never goes back and looks at the online platforms and the size of those platforms before she decides if guests are going to be a good fit for her show. So I think you need to know that. Funny enough, I did have a client recently who we sent an email pitch, and that was something that the host was interested in. So the content of the pitch sounded good. And then they referred us to a podcast application, which would have been really nice to know before we crafted an excellent email pitch. I'm just saying. So we go over to the application, and it has on there that anyone that's applying needs to have at least a 50,000 plus following on all social media platforms. I mean, that's a lot of people. So my client and I, well, even combined, we don't, but my client did not have that size of a social following. But because they had given us that link and they had access to all of the different places that my client lived on the internet, I figured they could have easily seen that she didn't. So we went ahead and we filled out that application. And interestingly enough, we got an email back at one point that was like something along the lines of, you don't really meet the criteria. And then very soon after, we got an email back that was like, actually, Susie Q looked over your topic and thinks it would be a great fit for her audience. So in 99% of the cases, the content and the pitch topic trump social following, because let's be real, most of us can just buy a social following if we want to throw enough money at ads, which I don't recommend doing before you start pitching. So that social following, people that are creating really rock solid content, they know that the social followings, yeah, sometimes it's a great indicator of audience size, but other times it's truly a vanity metric that doesn't really suggest the level of engagement that that person who's being pitched might actually have. So please do not wait to pitch yourself until you have grown a 50,000 plus following. Okay, second thing you do not need to wait on before you start pitching yourself is you do not need to achieve thought leader status to start pitching yourself as an expert. So you don't need a fancy degree. You don't need to get some big name award in your industry or land some super famous client. No, you do not need to be a thought leader to start pitching yourself. So we think of experts often as people like Amy Porterfield or Jen Hatmaker in different industries, right? But there's a difference between being an expert and being a thought leader. As an expert, we just need to own the fact that we have a level of proficiency in our industry and what we do and what we offer that is larger than what the average Joe has. And that expertise that we possess is really useful and valuable to those average Joes that we would be coming in front of and sharing our expertise with. So To be totally candid, I've never landed a client of mine on one of those huge podcasts, the ones that people, when they ask, what would be a dream podcast for you to be on? I've never landed my clients on any of those, although I have two really rock solid plans in place, and I cannot wait to make it happen. But unless you're pitching yourself for some of those types of podcasts, and even then, I would also think the folks that are at that thought leader status in terms of the podcast that they host, they are looking for rock solid content and interesting content that their listeners have not heard from before. And so I just don't want people holding themselves back because they think, I haven't done enough, I don't know enough. Stop it. If you can find a place where the level of expertise that you have in your topic, in your industry, is greater than the level of expertise that audience has, and it's valuable, girl, you are ready. Go pitch yourself. Okay. I'm almost off my soapbox. So lastly, the last thing you don't need to wait on is getting it perfect. If I had a nickel for every time I heard somebody reference, download this template for the perfect pitch, there is no such thing as a perfect pitch. Honestly, I have sent pitches that had typos in them. I've sent pitches that were probably off the mark. I'm thinking of one in particular that I totally did. It doesn't need to be perfect. And so, yes, people pay me money to get excellent results with the pitches that I send. But you know what? I sent my very first pitch. And you know what else? I sent a pitch on my behalf on Monday, and they are not perfect. So I don't want people waiting thinking, I need to get this totally perfect. I need to hem and haw over it until everything is 100% the best that it could be. No, stop doing that. You need to get out and go pitch yourself so that you can get data back and think, oh, is this pitch actually converting? Is it landing right with the audience that I'm pitching to? The truth is, if you lead with value and you really are focusing on building a genuine connection with that podcast host and then ultimately with their audience, you have done better than 75% of all the folks that are out there pitching themselves. So stop thinking that you have to be at a certain level or that you have to be a certain level of expert or the pitch has to be so perfect. It is just not the case. Lead with value, really focus on connecting, and it's going to happen. So hopefully at this point, you're a bit more clear on whether or not you're at a point in your business where it makes sense for you to start pitching yourself for any sort of visibility opportunity. And if you say, yep, and I am at that point after hearing all this, I think I'm at that point of pitching, but you're not actually out there doing it, then I challenge you to go pitch yourself, get yourself out there, put that foot forward and get it done. In fact, if you're listening to this episode and you're thinking, darn it, she's right, I so need to pitch myself, take a screenshot of this episode, share it on Instagram, tag me, Angie_Trueblood, and let me know that you are ready to get out there and go pitch yourself. And I will support you however I can. I will cheer you on because I know that's a really big first step for so many people. But if you're not putting yourself out there, the truth is your competitor, the person who has a business very similar to yours, is going to pitch themselves and they are going to get accepted somewhere. So I always fall back on the quote of, if not me, then who? If I'm not the one out there sharing the message of how pitching yourself for podcasts can really change your business, then I know someone else is going to be. So I choose for it to be me that's out there front of mind when people think of podcast pitching. And I would encourage you to really shift your mindset around that. If not you, then who? Who is going to pitch your expertise and get accepted if you choose not to? So go do it. Go pitch yourself. Here's the thing. If you feel like you need one-on-one support to get you pitching, whether it's because you're not quite sure who to pitch or what your talk topics should be, or you legit don't have time to do it, then I invite you actually to hop on a discovery call with me. I work with clients in a couple of different ways. and there's a good chance I've got something that will suit you to a T. So to learn more about it, and actually you can book a call right from my website, hop on over to angietrueblood.com/services. Check out what I offer. And then if you're interested in talking a little bit more, just sign up for a call and we'll chat through it and see what needs to happen to get you out there pitching yourself. All right, you guys have a great rest of the week and we will chat soon. Alrighty, pitches. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Now it's time for you to get out there and go pitch yourself. Want a team of cheerleaders rooting you on while you do? Then pop on over and join our free Facebook community, Go Pitch Yourself. It's full of entrepreneurs just like you who are stepping up, being seen, and supporting each other along the way. Don't forget to head on over to the website for show notes, downloads, and links to any resources we mentioned in this episode. The website is angietrueblood.com/podcast. Happy pitching!